Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome to this very special edition of Atlanta Business Radio. It is time for ATDC Radio. Stone Payton here with you. And first up today, please join me in welcoming to the broadcast CTO with Solar Inventions, Mr. Ben Damiani. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Stone.
Well, it is a delight to have you. We got a chance to visit a little bit before we came on air, but I think it would be helpful if you share with our listeners just a little overview, mission, purpose. What are you guys out there trying to do for folks at Solar Inventions?
Solar Inventions is a relatively small company, but what our goal is trying to help the innovation cycle within solar energy. So we're trying to bring in new technology that usually costs a whole lot of money and takes a lot of time to bring into the market. But we're trying to take a different approach where we're taking a very practical sense with that and try to bring in technologies that can be implemented quickly and less expensive and still improve the market.
And so what is kind of the state of the industry? Is this thing scalable? Like if I want to go out and buy a house or a car, can I get solar, or is it still a little bit out of reach? Where are we in general?
Well, I think that's really an excellent question in the sense that one of the things that I think we're in a culture right now where I get a lot of times people asking me what is, if someone's wealthy and wants to invest in solar energy or do something good for the environment, they ask, what company can I invest in? And I struggled with that for a long time because there's a lot of business and political inputs that come into solar industry that really confuse things, right? China can come in and do a bunch of crazy stuff. Well, a couple years ago, I kind of settled on giving some solid advice and invest in it yourself. The best investment that I can recommend in solar is put it on your house, because if you look at your power bill, then it's done nothing but go up for the past 100 years.
Well, that I can validate. I don't know everything I know about solar. You can stick in your eye and still see out, but that I can validate.
Exactly. So now you can put a stake in the ground and say, all right, I'm going to fix my price today. And solar has actually become the one of the least, if not the least expensive form of power generation. So, when you put that on your home, you still have to pay some fees to coordinate with Georgia Power or wherever you live. But it's really an excellent investment because you're fixing your cost, what your power energy or what your power cost will be for the next 30 years if you want. And usually the payback time is somewhere between 5 and 7 years right now.
All right. So there is a more substantial initial investment. I'm operating under that impression to get it set up, to get it installed. Yes. Yeah.
It's a little bit different model. There's some financing packages that are available out there, but in general, if you looked at a 2,500 square foot home, I think you could relatively confidently estimate that you'd need about a 10 kilowatt system, which might cost you somewhere between $15,000 and $22,000 to put on your home. So if you look at that as financing like a car, you're looking at, $300 a month, maybe $200 a month, depending on what you do for the finance period. And then those panels will produce power for the next 30 years, but they'll be paid off within 5 to 10.
Gotcha. So the math works.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. And then there's other things to be coordinated. Is that fall completely on the consumer, or has that sort of helped build a cottage industry of people that's what they do, is help you talk to Georgia Power and get all that figured out, or the guy who's selling you the panels, or how does that piece of it work?
There's a lot of parts in the value chain, but one of the things that Solar City, which was one of Elon Musk's early investments with his cousins, Lyndon Rive, and getting that business going, he kind of helped pioneer what was going on from what's called a power purchase agreement. So they were able to come to your home, because most of the time we're actually governed by law to buy power from Georgia Power, from your local utility. You're actually required. All right. And Georgia Power likewise is supposed to give you power, whether you live out in the sticks or in the middle of the city. And so that has helped control the cost. So what's happened in the last 10 years, there's been a various change of how the policy rolls out, where now before, I couldn't come to you and say, hey, let me put panels on your house. You pay me, your power bill goes away, and I'll give you clean energy. That wasn't legal, but now it is in many of the states around the U.S.
All right, and so where does Solar Inventions fit into this equation?
What Solar Inventions does, we kind of are the Intel inside at this point. So what we want to do is bring some really intelligent solutions out there and evolve the industry, and we want to do everything from help innovations from, energy storage all the way up through, finished systems at your home. At this stage, what we've done is I came with a lot of background knowledge on the semiconductor and making the solar cell within the solar panels. Because most of the solar panels out there, if you're driving on the road or looking at someone's house, you can see these little panels put up on light poles or on someone's house, and they're about the size of a door, and they have 6-inch squares inside of that panel covered by glass, and there's about 66-inch squares, typically what you would see. And so what we do is we help make that produce a little bit more power. We help that solar panel operate more safely or in a safer manner, where it doesn't have some of the challenges with hotspots. There was which are times where the solar panel can cause some heat dissipation to go into a specific area of the solar panel under non-optimal conditions. Sorry to get technical there.
But no, this is what happens when you disrupt an entire ecosystem. You come up with something new. It's got promise. Look, it's not always a bed of roses, and we got to have smart people, dedicated people, passionate people about that disruptive technology, and they got to be working on problems like this. And that's what Solar Inventions does. You guys you're out kind of in the forefront of that, it sounds like.
That's right. And so what we focus on at Solar Inventions is, right now, globally, you look at solar energy accounts for maybe a little over 2% of the total energy that we produce. What that means from a statistical perspective is that's billions of solar panels, because you're talking there's terawatts of power that we use every year. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge number. And the technology that we have really progressed in our first product technology is it's applicable for over 90% of the industry. So we can drop it in regardless of what technology is being used. We can put our technology on top of a typical module maker, increase their performance by around 1%. So you get more power, and then increase safety and more reliable performance as well.
Well, you must enjoy that, the fact that you can sort of be, from my world, I would say platform agnostic, but maybe it's technology agnostic or whatever that word, but you don't have to worry about that. So your conversations day to day are not with the end user consumer so much, except maybe from a research and customer discovery standpoint, but your day to day is you're talking with people who are manufacturing these panels and collaborating with them to bring a better product to the marketplace?
That's right. So we mainly at this point have dealt with people on the manufacturing side, so making the solar panels. So there's 2 companies here in the U.S. that we partner with. One is a very high technology company, and the other one is just the largest independent solar producer in the U.S. And we use that to deliver our finished products and do some pilot testing. But then we also go back to the manufacturers, which unfortunately now are all outside of the U.S.
Is that right?
Part of the initial, this whole round of trade and tariff laws.
Oh, that's really had an impact.
Oh, yeah. And it started in 2012. If you think back, originally the tariffs that were being put out were for steel and solar. And that was in 2012 because China at that time was dumping a lot of energy or a lot of solar panels and really dropping the cost on steel. And so there were tariffs that were put on anywhere from 10% all the way up to 250% for solar.
Oh, wow.
And for steel, I think it was like 10 to 25% on what it went. So I was a little bit relieved in 2016 when the whole world, all industries were impacted by the tariff because, we definitely have to adjust some of our practices on how we do business. We want to make sure those go well. And I didn't want that focused on solar to, bring in any kind of negative association with it.
Right. So, tell us about this American made solar prize. What's that all about?
This was this was a really thrilling thing to be a part of. And I did my PhD at Georgia Tech, and I finished in 2004. So I went through a lot of programs where we had some government funded and research opportunities where businesses come in and give money to the university to do a specific amount of research. Plus you can also get government money. Those typically will last 3 years. And for us in solar, what I was used to was somewhere between $3 and $5 million over a 3-year period to produce certain outcomes. Mm-hmm. Well, this American-made Solar Prize was directed at trying to help small businesses. And what happens quite frequently within a university or a research world is you can come up with a great idea, but it'll never make it into a business, because how do you connect the idea all the way through commercialization? And it's like the valley of death, they call it, with a lot of this entrepreneurial cycles. Yeah. So this American-made Solar Prize was geared to totally go after that part. And so what was different about it, what I was used to and normally was applying for money, telling what I was going to do for the whole 3 years to get that money and why it was worth it. Whereas this American-made Solar Prize said, what have you done? Show me what you've done. And we're going to have your peer group plus a panel of experts review that. We'll select the top 20 people. There's going to be 3 rounds. Each round will give away $1 million. So in the first round, they gave away $1 million. And that was split among 20 teams. So each team got $50,000. And that was a prize based on what they had accomplished for their business and what the applicability was for commercialization. So it was money that was able to go where you needed it to go as a business. Yeah. And that was a really different experience. And the amount of time that we had to put into it was not overwhelming, so that it didn't totally obscure our business activities. So we were real fortunate. We were one of the final teams to win in the third round. So in the third round, there was only 2 winners. And so 2 winners got to split $1 million. And
nice.
That was
and you were one of them.
We were one of them. We were fortunate, and that worked out really well.
Well, this whole business of going out and raising money, I mean, that's a whole nother job. I mean, it can consume, you got plenty to do as an entrepreneur. Your hair's on fire. You got so much going on. And then you got this whole other job of going to raise money, it seemed like, yeah?
It was incredible. So for as an example, with the money that we got from the American-made Solar Prize, when you're doing a startup business, you have to be very careful with your time and your money. And so you try to pick the path that you're going to be the most successful with. Once we were able to win some of this money, instead of choosing just one pilot partner, we were able to get 2 or 3 going at the same time, which gave us more data. It was more expensive for us to do, but it was very useful for what our business needed. And it just allowed us to go even faster. Whereas normally we would have been like, okay, that guy's going to be our best chance. Let's put all our effort there. Having these extra funds that we didn't have to go out and raise money for allowed us a lot of freedom and really did help our business achieve what I think the goal of the American-made Solar Prize was going after.
So when you say pilot partner, are you now talking about one or more of these manufacturers that you? Yeah. But now you could do more. You could work with more.
Exactly. So now we have two supply chain partners that are producing the raw material that we need to go into the solar panels. Then we have 2 pilot production for companies here in the U.S., and we've also reached out to some European-based companies that were bought by some Asian countries in the end. But we have 3 partners that we're working with, plus some other, they're supply chain people, but they're interested in our technology as well.
Well, I bet they are. So the role of ATDC, speak to that a little bit about, why ATDC? I mean, I know that you're a grad of tech, but there's probably more to it than that.
Absolutely. So the infrastructure, ATDC has actually been extremely helpful to me all the way up and through. Originally, because I've been in the solar industry since 1997, I was a part of many of the manufacturing, the companies when we did manufacture solar cells in the U.S. I was a part of both of the companies, or 2 of the biggest companies that manufactured here. And then with all the dynamics and changes that happened in the industry with China coming in and a lot of instability and how it came through, it wasn't really a venture capital type business to do solar manufacturing. There was a lot of just turmoil. And so ultimately I ended up going and trying to start my own manufacturing company. And in that effort, with communication through ATDC, I ended up meeting my current partners. And from a business perspective, I don't know if we were talking about this beforehand, but there was, the technology that we've developed in this first round is applicable to over 90% of the industry. And one of the other technologies that I've always been interested in doing, it's much more challenging technology wise. So I've got to do a lot more science with it. And that was the one that I thought was the most appropriate for me to go after. But once the business guys who I met through the ATDC got to look at the different technologies that are doing, I said, no, you need to focus on this one that hits 90%. Might not be as sexy, but it's where we want to be business wise. And it just made a whole lot of sense. So they've been fantastic all the way through.
Well, and you deserve the credit for being coachable, open, willing to pivot when you get, meaningful data like that in from experienced people that have an eye for that kind of thing, because I suspect one of the many advantages of being involved with ATDC is this, I think I've heard somebody characterize it as these collisions, right? When you're in this ecosystem, just right now while you and I are talking, like through the glass, there's stuff happening. There's a lot of IQ points walking these carpets and good people with good ideas, and they kind of meet and mash up, don't they?
Absolutely. And, so my business partners are Bill Nussey and Greg Freistadt, and they are just very well respected in the business community. Mm-hmm. And like you were saying, here at ATDC, you run into other people that are just the highest caliber and have great experiences and can really share some deep perspectives on what goes on in their business and help you out. So that's been a lot of fun.
So this American-made solar prize, where did the money come from? Are there just a group of really nice people? Or is it some people that, hey, look, there's a way to help some people and make some money with this thing. Let's go over here and build this thing and see if we can't get some stuff jump-started.
Yeah, I think it's really geared at our, the business environment has evolved, especially in the last, 150, however many years you want to go back. But originally what you had is big companies or what we might be used to from growing up is Bell Labs or,
right.
GE or IBM or somebody having a really large research place. And then the technologies evolved out of that. But that got slow and challenging. And so a lot of the research is done at the university phase. But like I mentioned earlier, that's had a lot of difficulties in getting commercialized. Places like Silicon Valley have done a good job with it, but not necessarily around the U.S. So the American-Made Solar Prize was a new program from the Department of Energy to try and help get these companies the good ideas out of the lab and into businesses. And so they really tried to focus, we need to throw money at the valley of death part of the cycle
right.
of the business to try and bring that up and get it going.
So do we need to find a way to further get more of those programs or more money in that program? Is it sufficiently funded? Do we need to get them? Do we need to somehow figure out how to get more of this?
I mean, I'm partial at this point, obviously.
You're biased, I'm sure,
right.
But I'll ask anyway, yeah.
But, I looked at it, as a scientist from a perspective of, I mentioned the story about doing research at the university, and you lay out 3 years worth of research and you get $3 to $5 million. And that might be a professor, 2 or 3 grad students, and you work through that technology. With this, for the same $3 million, there were 20 companies
right.
that did something within 1 year and were judged on it. So these were 3-month intervals that you had to reach your milestones or put out what your accomplishments were. And this put the technology directly into business. This rewarded your achievements by developing up pilot partners, achieving certain prototype goals. And it really seemed to be something that was very designed to be able to help businesses get across that very difficult place of commercializing from the idea into getting across that valley of death into commercial products. So I found it got a lot done for the same $3 million.
Right.
It really worked. And the fact that it was, peer reviewed plus expert reviewed plus
right.
government reviewed was really a fair process because, I was kidding with some of the guys around here when they said it restores your faith in government a little bit because I can tell you I'm not connected. So in order to get, this process that went through, and it was really tough judging, but it also, I saw with the American-made solar prize people, they put a lot of effort and faith into trying to make the right decisions,
right.
have the right questions so that they could pick out the winning teams that were going to do the most with the money and have the biggest impact on the solar industry. So I thought it was fantastic. And, the next round for it, this is open to anybody. You don't have to have a company, but December 10th is the third round. You got to submit like a 90-second video and what your idea is, but it's open to the entire world, or to the entire U.S., not the world.
Right. So as you sit here today, what's next for you? Where are your priorities and where's your energy and focus in the coming months?
So we have this, our first technology is called C3, the configurable current cell. We've got a couple of installations and pilot partners that we're working with. So not only are we making the solar panels that have the configurable current cell technology, which enhances the power and increases the safety of the panel, we also have end user customers where we're putting these out in the field in order to be able to gather more long-term data and really grab the benefits of what's going on. So by the end of this year, we should have the first two installations as well as, finishing up some of the agreements that we have with our pilot partners on production levels.
So what's going to have you, as my business partner Lee says, high-fiving in the parking lot, doing backflips, I don't know, what, a year from now, 2 years from now, what is that brass ring for you? Or are you still defining that?
That's, for me, technically, the first thing I have to say, I'm a little bit tilted towards the nerds. My business partners could tell you something different, but for me, I was looking at, we're working on some really exciting technology. And so one of the next things that we're working on is really going to increase the safety on the panels. And so that's the part that, that's what I thought about initially, but we of course want to have U.S. partners in particular adopting our technology so that they're the ones that's the first place to take advantage of the performance benefit and the safety benefit in the panels.
Right.
So that would be really exciting for us to get up to, a couple hundred megawatts on production of the C3 technology would be really fantastic.
I'll bet. Okay. So what do you need to get from here to there, and how can we help?
Oh, that's a great question. I guess we can have customers asking for the C3 technology, right? The American-made innovation that will. It really fits well for people's homes as well. But yeah, that's a big part of it. And, I think that's the biggest thing that I can think of.
So it may be a little too far down the chain, but I was just wondering about home builders and developers. Is there's going to be a point at some point you're going to want to kind of continue to enlist people at that level, right? And have them at least consider if they're developing an area, or if a consumer asks for it, you want them to be well equipped to deliver on solar solutions. So that's in the plan at some point, right?
Absolutely. And I think what that made me think of is when, for us developing this technology, in order for us to be able to supply it to customers, there's got to be a lot of demand. You can't come in with, 1, 2, 10, 100, or even 1,000 homes, right? It's got to be on the level of 1,000 homes starts to get up there. But then, because the industry is so big and it moves not so fast, in many respects. But if you've got the demand that is asking for a product, that really helps streamline the supply chain. It helps us get things through.
And it gives you some economies of scale in all kinds of ways, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, we try to gear it in a way where everybody wins through the value change, because we save a little bit of money in the manufacturing process for creating the C3 technology. So hopefully, the end user benefits with better power and better safety.
So if somebody listening would like to have a conversation with you or someone on your team about this topic or about any of these topics, what's the best way for them to reach out? Whatever's appropriate. I don't know, email, phone number, LinkedIn. What's the best way for them to connect with you or somebody on your team?
Our website is up and going, and so you can go to www.solarinventions.com, and there's a contact page through there, and you can put in those questions that you've got, and we'll get back with you.
Well, thank you so much for coming to visit this morning, and keep up the good work, man. This is an exciting time for you, but I think it's an exciting time for all of us because I feel like we're almost at the precipice of this being very practical for all of us. And there's all kinds of reasons that we ought to seriously be exploring this, aren't there?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that I've found myself saying a lot in the last couple of years is, and I actually heard this from a politician a few years ago, that we didn't leave the Stone Age because we ran out of stone. Right? There was a better technology that came along, right? Iron was just better. And so I think, we've got, solar is definitely going to be part of the energy production in the future, and it has some advantages. And I think there'll be a lot of uses for it going forward.
That's a great quote. I'm going to credit you for that for a while. And then at some point I'm going to start saying, like I always say, then it'll become a Stone quote, right?
Exactly.
Well, it's been an absolute delight having you on the show. Thanks so much for sharing your story, man.
I appreciate it, Stone. It was a pleasure to be here.
All right. This is Stone Payton for our guest today, Ben Damiani, and everyone here at the Business RadioX family saying we'll see you next time on ATDC Radio.